Hello and welcome to the Service-Based Business Society podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany-Ann Bottcher. I left the corporate world to build my own businesses, and along the way, I've learned that scaling isn't all highlight reels. It's messy, it's hard, and it's totally worth it. As a mom of three, the author of The Data-Driven Method, and a serial entrepreneur, I know firsthand what it takes to build something bigger than yourself. This show is where we get real about entrepreneurship. The good, the bad, the beautiful, and yes, even the ugly. Each week, I'll pull back the curtain to share stories, lessons, and strategies that help ambitious entrepreneurs scale their success. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to another episode. Whether you've been with me for over 100 episodes or you've just stumbled upon the show today, I thought it might be time for a bit of an introductory refresher. Time to reintroduce myself, pull back the curtain a little, and share why this podcast exists, what drives me forward, and how I want to serve you as we move ahead. So, for those who may be really new, I'm Tiffany-Ann Bottcher, and I am a data-obsessed mom of three who went from scaling a corporate business to over $12 million a year in revenue to stepping out on my own and building multiple of my own companies. So when I left the corporate space, I was a partner, and leaving was probably one of the scariest things I've ever done. I've talked about it in previous episodes. There was this time where you felt like it was the right thing to do, but it's pretty scary. And I think, really resonates with anyone who has left the security of a corporate cushy position, any 9 to 5 really, and started their own business. There is a lot of uncertainty when it comes to starting your own business. I had 3 kids, a mortgage, a life built around earning great money. And so taking the decision to walk away from all of that and start my own businesses was truly a massive decision. So since then, I have built several companies within my own portfolio, which the parent company is called Bottcher Group. So within that, we have Path to Profit Bookkeeping and Tax, which helps business owners with bookkeeping in a variety of different ways. We offer services like your standard monthly bookkeeping, but we also offer some more impactful high-touch services where we are ultimately, our team is replacing any kind of in-house accounting team. We are managing an accounting email. We are dealing with vendors, customer payments, all of these types of things to ultimately take any of the stress away from business owner admin team for bookkeeping. It just gets handled in the background. We also have a company called Goal Getter Media. We do podcast production, some video editing. We do a proprietary social media marketing called Set It and Forget It. Businesses that are looking to have that cohesive online presence without having to take care of it themselves. So that Set It and Forget It marketing is not for businesses that are trying to sell online or really use that to generate leads. Set It and Forget It marketing is truly so that your business has an online presence that is cohesive with the rest of your marketing, but isn't something that you want to be dealing with or worrying about. We also have the Service-Based Business Society, which this podcast is a part of. We do several different types of content under that brand. And ultimately, it really is that community for business owners looking to scale their success, learn what it takes, different resources. We have amazing, incredible guests on this podcast with a variety of topics. And so that is how that fits in. And last year, a new company called TaxGo. And that is for personal taxes within Canada. So we launched that very quietly, almost kind of during tax season, with the focus of really preparing for this tax season. So we made some changes to our processes. We did a bunch of updating and some automation and some really cool stuff. And I wanted to test that system, that process, all of that through one tax season before we really ramped up for the second one. There's certain parts of your business that you can't actually battle test, I call it, without putting them live, without testing them out. And so for something like tax season, well, we don't really get another go at that until the following year. Sometimes it's a matter of jumping. Maybe done is better than perfect. Our TaxGo everything was pretty close to finish. Ultimately, we were issuing tax services under another brand anyway, so it wasn't completely outside the realm of what we were doing, but some of our new processes, updates, this really kind of tax service, a slightly newer concept. It is a pretty big name in taxes. They have a lot of mall outlets, and we really want to, similar where anyone can get their taxes done, but that they're going to do that in a more virtual way on your cell phone, couple emails. You don't need to be going anywhere. A lot of people in today's day and age don't want to be doing a lot of phone calls. They just want to get it done. Those are the companies in our current business umbrella. And there's lots of different things going there. So I'm going to talk a little bit today, the other things that make me, some of the key things that I think have made my business journey a little unique. I want to share a little bit behind the curtain about some of these things that I have going on. I feel like this podcast, as we've gone through each of the seasons, has evolved a little bit. I talked about that on season 5, episode 1, where even the messaging and the intro of the podcast no longer felt as congruent with where business had taken me. There's this growth, this evolution. And so here we are today, and we're going to be diving into all of these topics. Outside of business, I am often at the lacrosse field. My kids are avid lacrosse players, and my daughter is an all-star cheerleader. So I really do also have those elements of juggling. I have 3 kids, I have 2 wiener dogs, and it's a busy life. I often refer back to, if you think of that reality TV show, John and Kate plus 8 from a million years ago. Their intro always kind of stuck with me to this day. And Kate, for all of your opinions on Kate, I believe it said something along the lines of, it's a crazy life, but it's our life, or something along those lines. And I truly feel that to my core. Oftentimes, our life of 3 kids, 2 dogs, multiple businesses. My husband also is in an executive level position, works a lot. And so I would say overall, our life it's a crazy life, but it's ours. And so I really have tried to just embrace that. But oftentimes people who are in our circle often say things like, oh, it's too much. Sure, it's not too much. And I guess I just don't really know anything different. I feel like for many years, this has been, it's first you have 1 kid and you have 2 kids. It's not like all of a sudden you get dropped into this life. I can't imagine being transplanted into this life with multiple businesses and kids and sports schedules and everything else. And so I try to do my best and often say that to my kids. Hey, I tried my best. That's all I ever ask you for. And every so often, something doesn't quite go according to plan. I am the queen of the one more thing. But we can definitely fit one more thing in before we have to leave. And then are rushing out the door going, oh my goodness, we should have left 5 minutes ago. It's pretty typical. In fact, as I'm recording this podcast episode, I'm thinking, hey, I probably could have started this a little earlier because it's almost time for that next thing in the schedule. To that effect, I also believe that if I stopped doing that, I would get way less things done because I seize opportunities as I go to get in here or do it there. Or, walk past, I change the load of laundry each time I walk past the laundry room. Because ultimately, when else am I going to get it done? Those are, to kind of into what life is like here. It's busy, but I really wouldn't have it any other way. When I launched the podcast 5 seasons ago, it was truly something that I started with something in mind. The podcast has turned into something greater and larger than I could ever have imagined. It is become something that I adore doing. I love connecting with our guests. I love having those conversations. I love sharing what is going on behind the scenes. And especially as over the last more recent times, as we have really started to share even more things. Our number 1 episode ever in the history of the podcast is the anti-hustle movement episode. And that episode I feel that episode to my core because often we focus on things about boundaries and work-life balance and, these different kind of pushing back. We can't do this and we won't do that. And I don't work after this time and I won't travel for this and I won't do this and I won't. And we've kind of sight of what it takes to build a business. Because if you're only willing to work until 4:55, chances are someone else is willing to work until later, someone who is hungrier, someone who wants those things. People often ask me, especially guests, who are the people that you want to talk to with this episode? Who are we chatting with? And I always say, this is for business owners who want to do big things. They want to do transformational things in their industry. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the biggest sales. It sometimes can just mean doing things differently, whether that's bringing some new sense of innovation to an older industry. Maybe that's you want to bring a different level of customer delivery. Maybe that is that you want to have the biggest business in a specific industry. However that is for you, the people that this podcast really should resonate the best with are people who want to do something big within their business, their life, their industry, because we're not talking about the 5 easiest ways to do something. In fact, I very rarely will default to what is the cheapest way? What is the easiest way? What is the laziest way? Do I want to be efficient? Do I want to be innovative? Do I want to touch things the least amount possible? Do I want to lean into using modern day technology? Yes, absolutely, to all of these things. But my ways are, I'm not seeking out the easiest way. I'm not the person who will say, hey, how can you do 40 hours a week in a 2-hour work week? That's not who I am. I work all the hours. I build the businesses. I love what I do. And I hope that you as a business owner also love what you're doing, and that you're passionate about what you're doing. Now, that's not to say at times we don't go through periods where we dislike our businesses. I saw someone recently share on their stories, and it said to the successful women out there who are secretly hating their businesses. And then in small text, it says, I won't tell anyone. And I think that post really stuck out for me because I think we have this illusion that we're always going to love our businesses. We built it exactly like this. You built it how you wanted it. And then sometimes you're like, is this really what I wanted? It's the people who say, hey, I want to do these things. And maybe they hire. Perhaps you were in the field. Maybe you were a professional organizer and you've hired a team of organizers and now you run a team of people. Maybe you don't like that so much. Maybe when you were an organizer, you worked in the quiet. You came into someone's home, you connected with the homeowner, and then you said, okay, I'm going to go and get started. And you worked quietly on your own independently. And now through growth and transformation, suddenly you're never working quietly. I know that this happens to so many people as they scale teams. Perhaps they were quiet, slightly introverted, kind of in themselves kind of people, and suddenly they're doing so much peopling. My husband and I talk about this so often because both of us are definitely on the quieter side. You could independently take each of us, drop us in a room to work on the computer quietly, getting stuff done, and not need that kind of big social human interaction element. However, both of us are in roles where we need to do that. So we get to the weekend and we're both like, oh my goodness, we are peopled out. We just need a little quiet time. It's nice that we are similar that way because we enjoy that same thing. I think that would be more challenging if one of us like, hey, let's get out. We need to do this and do that and visit with these people and go here and go. I want to get things done. And I definitely am not good at downtime, but it doesn't necessarily need to be with a lot of human interaction. People often find that surprising. You have a podcast, you do a lot of content creation, you talk to clients and your team, and whatever. And I say, I actually am fairly quiet and introverted. That sometimes catches people by surprise, but that is definitely me and who I have always been. Someone explained to me being introverted in a way that resonated so hard with me at a business conference years ago. Because a lot of times people think I'm introverted, and that means I'd rather just not deal with the people. I'd rather kind of do quiet things. Maybe you're quiet, maybe you're shy, and you're saying you're introverted. And someone explained things to me and said, if you have a certain number of coins, social coins, and if you are interacting with people, that's giving you more coins. You have a great interaction and it adds to the coins. People who are introverted, typically you have a great interaction and you spend 1 coin. You have a great interaction, you spend 1 coin. It doesn't mean you don't enjoy the interactions. It doesn't mean that you don't have the interactions. It just means that at one point, you're out of coins. You get energy coins, something else. It's not from necessarily people interaction. So as you're building your business, as I've built my business, being mindful of what are those things. When we started this podcast, it actually started with a Facebook community. If you go back to earlier episodes, it often talks about the Facebook community. Join the Facebook community, come hang out and connect in the Facebook community. Through the process of 5 seasons, I realized, hey, I really enjoy the podcast. I love connecting with those guests and business owners. I love the conversations that happen in the comments, in the DMs of the podcast platforms. I don't enjoy moderating and being part of a Facebook community. I enjoy being in other Facebook communities where I can pop in. I can be that person that lurks in the shadows, makes a comment here, those kinds of things. But overall, I'm not the person who is leading the community. I have other people in my life that are really great at leading community, creating community, fostering that. That's not my skill. That uses up an excessive amount of my social coins. And so I feel like it's not worth it. That's not where I am currently. I think the other thing, though, that we have to factor in is being somewhere currently versus forever. So I started with a Facebook community and decided ultimately that wasn't what I wanted. And so we closed the community down. It doesn't mean I upended everything. We do so many other parts and things, and we evolved in other ways. Does that mean that at one point I wouldn't do a different variety of community? Does that mean that? No, it means that you have to be willing to honor what you need at the time. I like to think that this show is for service-based entrepreneurs who are ready to scale their businesses and their success without losing themselves in the process. I used to say scaling without losing sleep. I lose sleep all the time, sometimes by choice, sometimes because something just needs to get done, sometimes because I have made a choice that I want to do something with the time. Perhaps I've decided, hey, I want to go and watch 2 hours of tryouts next to the field. And I know at the time that that means that I'm going to have to take that 2 hours and stick it in somewhere else. It doesn't mean that I'm just going to abandon those 2 hours worth of tasks. It typically means that I'm going to put them in at night. We do the typical daytime work during the day, do a lot of kids' sports, a lot of activities. I say my second job is being a chauffeur, driving kids from here to there. But I love that I can be the person who gets to stand there and cheer them on. But then in the evening, I start what I refer to as the night shift. And oftentimes I'll back from a computer, deal with things as they come up. That's when I get to do things like record the podcast, edit some content, do those kinds of things that require that a little bit more quiet time for some creativity. One of my businesses does run a night shift. So we have a team on later on in the evening. So I'm checking in with those team members, answering any questions, checking in with the shift manager saying, hey, what's going on with the team? Do we need to connect on any of these other items? And so ultimately, all of that to say, you need to build your life and business for what works for you. I don't have a lot of downtime, but I don't always need a lot of downtime. I shared on a previous episode that I would love to be able to get away for a few days and get to the point where my business doesn't have any major issues with that happening. We're not there yet, but we are the closest we've ever been. I recently was chatting with someone and we were talking about some piece of technology and they said, well, this is the worst it'll ever be because it only gets better from here. And I thought that was a great way of really capturing where your business is, where your life is, where your knowledge is. You're going to grow and you're going to build. And then sometimes you go through those periods of stress. I've referred to it in previous episodes as the valley of death. And so it's kind of that point in anything where you can't really go back. You can't really stay where you are. You have to keep going, but it's going to be tough. In business, a lot of times it's because you're going through a phase where your business has the costs of a big business, but isn't quite there yet. But you had to invest in some of those pieces in order to get to being there. Perhaps it's investing in some kind of manager for your business on an opposite shift, night shift manager. I remember when we made that shift to having leadership on a stuff. Not because I don't often check in, but because I do want to be able to at one point not have to feel like I need to check in. Perhaps get to the point where I check in less frequently and someone has been empowered to make the decisions when I'm not around. Someone has been empowered to be able to keep things moving, to be able to team. And so, it takes a long time for people to get into those roles, to know what you would want, to do what to do when you are absent and those types of things. And so hiring and implementing those people sooner so that you can get them ready so that when you really need them, they're ready to go. Investment. And so sometimes we have to invest in those people. So now we have these bigger costs without necessarily the bigger delivery. You haven't yet been able to say, hey, I invested in this person who's going to do this role. And with that time, I'm going to go and sell this, which is going to make more money. That process takes a little time. It's not a matter of I hired that person, they're in that role, I pay them more money, but I save 5 hours, I take that 5 hours and I do this. it takes time. So sometimes if you're in high growth and you're doing that investing in a lot of areas, maybe it's tech, maybe it's people, maybe it's those, if you have people who are working in the field, all those different things, investments, whatever, they really contribute to that feeling of, oh my goodness, I need to keep going. I need to grow because I need to now pay for all of these things that I've invested in. Cash flow, being able to invest in these pieces are all key parts of business that if your business is new, you may not have credit facilities. A lot of very successful businesses go under, not because they're not profitable, but because they have a cash flow problem. If you are extending credit to others, if you're not paying at the time of, fronting the cost for jobs and getting the money back later, you're investing in growing people, you're investing in improving your innovation technology, building systems, all these types of things, it becomes a bigger and bigger business to pay for. And there's that valley of death. You have to cross it and get to the other side. One of the things I'm so passionate about is the data and the numbers behind businesses. And I would say it's probably the part that I don't talk that much about on the podcast, even though it is such a key piece of my business and my beliefs. I wrote a book called The Data-Driven Method. It looks at all of these different metrics and different things. The book has a dashboard, a template that goes with it so that you can take what you learn from the book and drop it into these things. And it's interesting because over 5 seasons now, starting the 5th season, we had so many guests on and they talk about their books and their businesses and they talk about how they offer impact and value. And I don't know that I've ever really had an episode where I dive into what are these different businesses and what do they do? How do they help entrepreneurs? That I wrote a book, that I've stood and spoken about that book on stages and shared this dashboard and templates and these types of things that can help grow businesses. This is the area that I often say, well, but the data isn't the sexy side of business. I love it, but it's a lot of what I do isn't the flash and dash and exciting parts of business, but it is so important. So this season, we're going to talk a little bit more about those things. We're going to talk about those specific metrics and pieces. And I immediately say, before you run off because you think, oh, this is going to be turning into a snooze fest, then I think, why do I want to say that though? It isn't. And those who, if we go back to who is that key audience, I'm kind of almost talking myself through this a little bit at a moment. The key audience wants to do big things. They want to make impact. Well, we need to know what these specific pieces are. So this season might be a little bit more into some of these pieces that I'm super passionate about and passionate about sharing, about helping you implement them in your business. So I'm going to drop the link for the Data-Driven Method into the show notes of this episode so that you can check out the book. It's got that free downloadable template that's going to walk you through implementing some of these things in your business. You can expect episodes packed with actionable strategies, thought-provoking conversations, and maybe even a little tough love. If you go back to that episode about the anti-hustle movement, it really was kind of that episode saying, a lot of great people who have done a lot of amazing things in business are now saying, hey, don't forget work-life balance. Hey, don't feel like you have to work so hard. Hey, don't do these things. And it's like, hey, but the people who are talking that, those people who are sharing that message, they already earned their stripes. They built their business based on all of the things that they're saying now you don't have to do. And maybe they don't have to do it now. You won't always have to do the hard work, do the things. Your business grows, you evolve, you hire the right people know how to do the right things, the business grows again, all of those types of things. But if you're not at that phase yet, if you're not there yet, then that information doesn't always apply. It's taking the right advice and aligning it with the timing. I'm not here to give you cookie cutter advice. I'll share the wins, the mistakes, the lessons learned from working in the corporate world, starting my own businesses, growing my businesses, and also working hands-on with incredible entrepreneurs through each of my companies. You'll get the unpolished, at times, behind-the-scenes look at scaling with a side of encouragement to go bigger than you think you can. Let's remember, your future, your outlook is really capped by your vision. If you are thinking small, you'll only ever be small. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that follow button. We have the video version of the podcast up on YouTube. We have the audio versions of the podcast on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, really that classic everywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you're a longtime listener, this is your invitation to share the show with a friend, someone who's chasing their own big goals, or perhaps someone who is starting a business. One of the most exciting things for me this season was my son deciding that he wanted to start a podcast. He's 10. He is lacrosse obsessed, and he decided he wanted to host a podcast. So he got started with an idea. He worked through some of these pieces, and his podcast is live. He's having fun with it. That was one of these moments where the big vision, it's now funneling through down to him. And as a mom, that is so incredible. You want to connect with me and discuss any of the episodes, the podcast is on LinkedIn and Instagram. Of course, you can search Tiffany-Ann Bottcher on YouTube. I review the comments and often use questions for future episodes in the show. If you are interested in learning more about how my businesses support entrepreneurs in their goals, you can go to bottcher.io, bottcher.io. There are links to each of our respective businesses on those pages. Thanks for being here. It means the world to me that this podcast has grown into such an incredible source for so many business owners. And let's keep building successful businesses that are scalable, that are profitable. This episode has been more about sharing a little bit more about me and how my story and what I have to share is relevant for you as a business owner. Up next, we have a very special guest next week, and I am super excited to bring that episode to you. So that's all for today. That's all the time we have for today, but the conversation doesn't stop here. Be sure to subscribe to the Service-Based Business Society podcast on all of your favorite apps. And if you're hanging out over on YouTube, search for Tiffany-Ann Bottcher. Your likes, comments, and shares don't just help the show, they help more entrepreneurs find the real stories and strategies that they need to scale. Until next time, keep pushing, keep building, and I'll catch you in the next episode.